And the question is, as a game master, should you have your bad guys focus fire? And so before we answer that question though, I want to examine what I have noticed my players do all the time. So I might have 5 bad guys, and let's say that we have 5 players and they meet in combat. Can you guess what my players do? Do my players A, spread their attacks out across all of the enemies, B, try to kill one enemy at a time focusing fire because they know that an enemy with 1 hit point is just as dangerous as an enemy with 10 hit points as 100 hit points, or C, something else inexplicable or irrelevant to the conversation, I suppose. So do players focus fire, or do players spread their attacks out over the enemies? By the way, if you're looking for a D&D adjacent board game perfect for introducing the genre to your friends and family, Dungeon Drifters is exactly what you need. Interdimensional portals have appeared the world over, and vicious monsters have begun to pour forth. But opportunistic heroes stand in their way. Prepare your tire iron, don your beer hat, and take up your bucket of fries. Do you have what it takes to delve into the layers of these foul creatures in search of fame, fortune, and as much loot as your greedy hands can carry? Dungeon Drifters comes with 46 full-color acrylic minis, over 100 gorgeous playing cards, and gobs of dice. Plus, the 3 expansions add even more content. So delve deep and strike true. Can you become the greatest Dungeon Drifter of all? Follow Dungeon Drifters at the link below to get notified when we launch. Don't miss out on the Kickstarter exclusive pricing or the free mini, Vareth the Fallen Protector, that everyone who backs in the first 72 hours will receive. Well, if you have smart players or tactically minded players, they will tend to focus fire because they know that the enemies are very dangerous until they're dead. Now, you're probably going to have players that'll spread their attacks out a little bit, but usually they're going to try to focus fire. That is the accepted thing. I don't know what your guys' players do, but my players almost always focus fire to a certain extent. Maybe not always on one enemy, but for sure on a couple of them. They're going to focus fire. So this is what players do, and for good reason, because it's smart. It's very, very smart. In a game where an enemy until they're dead is just as dangerous as an enemy that has like 1 hit point or 20,000 hit points, you're gonna focus fire until they go down. This is what players do, right? Everybody's players probably do this to some extent or another because that's the smart thing to do. Magic users and healers should be targeted first. Absolutely 100%. Why would players, and my players do this all the time, but why would players target magic users and healers first? Because they're the most dangerous. Magic users have nasty spells that can screw you up. You gotta kill them first. Healers prevent their allies from dying. So stop the healers, holy crap. So yes, that's another thing players do. If there's a magic user or a healer, they're gonna try to take them down very fast as they can. This is what we see players do all the time. So then, back to the original question. How should a game master run the monsters? Should the bad guys focus fire, or should the bad guys spread their attacks out across all of the players? Well, it depends. The answer, I think, depends on whether you are trying to run a game or just trying to roleplay the enemies with absolute fidelity to what they actually would do. If we're trying to roleplay, and it's generally referred to as a role-playing game, sometimes some games call themselves the world's greatest role-playing game, which is probably a little bit of hubris there. But if you're trying to roleplay the monsters, it would make total sense, would it not, that monsters would focus fire to a large extent, because player characters are just as dangerous at 1 hit point as they are at 100 hit points. And can we not also say that monsters would try to take down healers and magic users first, because healers and magic users are very dangerous. In other words, the very same thing that players do to monsters, does it not make sense if we're role-playing to high fidelity that monsters would do the same thing to players and try to take them down as fast as possible and focus fire? I think probably the answer is yes. That makes complete sense because it's reasonable and logical, and smart creatures would do this. But then we're talking about smart creatures, right? If it's a hobgoblin, very intelligent, and also hobgoblins are known for being very militaristic, very tactical, militaristic creatures. Hobgoblins would absolutely focus fire. Now, if you're talking about zombies that have no intelligence, yeah, sure, they're just gonna attack whatever's closest to get some food. But intelligent creatures that have no tactics and no combat are going to focus fire and try to take down healers and magic users first. Even something like an ogre. Ogres probably are pretty dumb. No, they are pretty dumb. But they know about smashing things. And ogres probably know that magic users that do fireballs are bad. So even when you go into creatures that aren't that intelligent, but they are combat type creatures and they're known for their warlike aggressive behavior, they're still going to know a few things about who to target in combat and optimal things to not die, which is to kill the other guys first. And so if you're role playing, it makes total sense to focus fire and take out healers and magic users first. The problem is, if you do that, it can result in an unenjoyable game experience, because if you have 5 players and all the hobgoblins just say, oh, take out the wizard is going to be dead in 1 round. He's done. And then you have that player sitting out the rest of the combat, probably not doing a whole lot. Maybe making some saving throws. Oh, maybe the healer, maybe the cleric does like healing word or something and gets them back up. Oh, but then the hobgoblins are like, not gonna take that, healer. Now that we know you're a healer, they focus fire. The healer's done. Oh crap, now the healer's out. Well, shoot, now what are we gonna do? The healer's out, the wizard goes back down again because he tries to drop a fireball and the hobgoblins aren't having any of it. And then you have the melee characters and a ranger left, right? And then the hobgoblins start focusing fire again. And of course, they're not gonna focus. Everybody builds a tank. This is one of my pet peeves. I have players that build tanks that have like armor class of 22 or even higher, and they're like, I'm a tank, nothing can hit me, haha. And then they're surprised when the monsters don't try to hit them. But I'm a tank, I was designed so you can't hurt me. Exactly. And that's the very reason those monsters aren't trying to hurt you, because they know they can't. Instead, they're doing the smart thing. They're focusing on the ranger, or the other character here that doesn't have very good armor class, because if they could ignore you and take out the other ones first, those other ones aren't doing damage. And then when you, as the tank, are the last ones standing, they can finally focus fire on you and try to get through your armor. And so, just a pet peeve of mine, I have players who make heavily armored characters and then they get kind of upset when monsters won't attack them. But if the monsters can't hit you, it makes sense that they're gonna stop trying and they're gonna go fight the other guys they can hit who are also doing damage to them. So, the problem though, of course, is that if monsters focus fire and monsters use some of these tactics that make complete sense in many cases, not all, depending on their intelligence, their knowledge of tactics, of course, but if they use these tactics that make complete sense in many cases, it results in an undesirable game for the players because they're being dropped, right? And then they can't, and it's like a death spiral, right? And then you have a tank who's like, I am built to be a tank, and nobody's attacking me. I am a sucky tank. So that is probably the best argument I can give you for not focusing fire, even though it completely makes sense to focus fire and monsters should focus fire, even though it results in possibly a less desirable game or undesirable game experience. But I don't know. What do you think? Like, is this a balance? Should the game master balance focusing fire and not focusing fire? Should they just say screw it and role play them? Should they just say, hey, it's a game? Should they ignore what the players do and don't replicate and do the exact same thing? Like, I don't know. I feel like this is kind of muddy water because on one hand, we want to role play, and on the other hand, we want to have a fun game. And sometimes, and this, I think this is an example of it, when the two are kind of conflicting, they're at odds with each other.